and welcome to Boxing in Your Face. This week we have none other than the great Floyd Patterson, former two-time heavyweight champion, the youngest heavyweight champion at the time to become champ. And he was trained and managed by Cus D'Amato. Now Cus D'Amato, as you well know, also trained by Tyson and to become the youngest heavyweight champion of the world, and also trained former light heavyweight champion Jose Torres. Well, Cus D'Amato took a lot of interest in Floyd, a young man who had a tough upbringing, and he was recruited by Cus D'Amato up to New York City, upstate New York, where Cus took Floyd under his wing, got him to become a decent amateur fighter. Then he went into the Olympics in 1952. Floyd became middleweight gold medalist, and a lot of people felt that Floyd would be probably a great middleweight champion, but as you well know, Floyd was young. He was like 21 years of age, and then he developed to be a little bit bigger and went up past light heavyweight. He had a couple of fights, and then he became a heavyweight contender and ended up fighting for the vacant heavyweight championship against the great Archie Moore. And Archie Moore at that time had over 100 professional fights under his belt. He was in his mid to late 30s, and Floyd Patterson, with his youth at his side and the speed that he had, devastating left foot, ended up stopping Archie Moore for the vacant heavyweight title. That fight took place in 1956. Now, Moore got stopped in the 5th round, and I think shortly thereafter, Archie Moore decided he was going to pack it in. But Archie Moore was also one of the great light heavyweights of all time. We'll talk about him in another segment in the coming weeks. Floyd Patterson, that same year, had a couple of fights, just tune-up fights. Then in 1957, July 1957, he fought a tall, lanky fighter by the name of Tommy Hurricane Jackson. And Hurricane Jackson was a relentless fighter, but with Patterson's bobbing and weaving and keeping his gloves up in his peekaboo style, it was hard for Tommy Jackson to connect Patterson with any damaging punches. Anyway, Tommy Jackson got stopped in the 10th round. And but that was a fight that many fans, I remember watching that fight, and I thought that Tommy Hurricane Jackson, but he was a decent fighter, and he stayed as a top contender for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, but never got a shot at the title again. So anyway, Patterson ended up retaining his title with that fight. Then that same year, Patterson, August 22, he fought Pete Rademacher. Pete Rademacher was a former Olympic champion himself, and fought Patterson, and Patterson really basically played with him, and it was a different league, and Patterson ended up knocking out Rademacher in the 6th round to retain his title as well again. Then in 1958, August 18, 1958, Patterson gave an opportunity to a young fighter by the name of Roy Harris, who was a tough fighter and took a lot of punches from Patterson, but very competitive. Ended up getting stopped in the 14th round. Again, Patterson retaining the heavyweight championship. Then May 1st of 1959, back in LA, Patterson gave an opportunity to a fighter by the name of Brian London. Brian London, another tough fighter, took a lot of punches. It was competitive fight, but in the later rounds, Patterson took control and ended up stopping Brian London in the 14th round. Then July of that same year, Ali stays in my mind because we're going to be talking about Ali coming up soon. But Patterson ended up fighting Ingemar Johansson. Ingemar Johansson was an unknown fighter, good-looking guy. As a matter of fact, they even used him as models here in the United States when he came from I believe it was Scotland, if I'm not mistaken, or he came from someplace in Europe. Not important. The thing was that he gave Patterson the surprise of his life, because he ended up knocking out Floyd Patterson in the, I believe it was in the it was in the third round. He ended up stopping Patterson. Patterson wanted a rematch, and they got the rematch again with Ingebrigtsen Johansson. But that fight took place a year later, May 13th of '61, and Ingebrigtsen Johansson ended up getting stopped in the 6th round. Then Patterson regained his title and felt that he was back on track. Then in 1961, he gave an opportunity to a fighter by the name of Tom McNeely. And Tom McNeely, as you all recall, there was another Tom McNeely who fought Mike Tyson after Mike Tyson got released from prison. That was his first fight after coming out from being incarcerated. But Tom McNeely was the father. But he fought Floyd Patterson. Floyd Patterson ended up stopping him in the 4th round. Then 1962, between 1961 and 62, Floyd had about 4 or 5 fights, and everybody wanted him to fight Sonny Liston, and they were trying to keep him away from Sonny Liston because Sonny Liston was a very big heavyweight. He came in about 225, and we had about a 4 or 5 inch reach on Patterson. Had a devastating hard jab, and quick straight, wicked right punches. Well, he ended up fighting Sonny Liston 1962, and that fight took place in Chicago, and Patterson ended up getting knocked out in the 1st round. And wow, everybody was like, you know, they couldn't believe that this had happened. And well, I think Patterson felt that, you know, I want to get my title back, and he said, well, and he got lucky, whatever. They fought again in 1963, again. But there was a fight that, when there was a punch that it was a short punch that put Patterson down. He went down again. I believe he went down the 2nd time. The thing was, Patterson ended up knocking out, Liston ended up knocking out Patterson again in the 1st round. That fight took place in Las Vegas, Nevada. And then Patterson took off for a little while there, and then he came back and fought a couple of top contenders and got his way back a little bit up, enough to get Muhammad Ali's attention. Ali said, you know what, I'm going to give you an opportunity for my title. Ali had not won the title from Liston. So Patterson took a shot with Ali. Patterson tried his best, but Patterson complained a lot about it. He had back problems. I don't know if that was an excuse, but Ali ended up stopping him in the 12th round. And so Muhammad Ali retained his title. And then Patterson took off for a while. He came back in 1968 and fought a fighter by the name of Jimmy Ellis. That fight with Ellis was a fight that a lot of folks remember because Patterson tried his best. He went the distance with with Ellis. It went 15 rounds. But let me tell you a little story about Jimmy Ellis. Jimmy Ellis, that fight took place in 1968. 7 years prior to that, Ellis was fighting on the Chicago Golden Glove team, representing the Chicago, the Western Coast. I represented the East Coast, the New York team, and I was in the bantamweight division. Jimmy Ellis was a middleweight, and Jimmy Ellis ended up losing in the Nationals, intercity bouts, against a fighter by the name of Johnny, I take it back, it was Johnny Pearsall. He lost to Johnny Pearsall, who was our New York champion, middleweight champion. We won the Easters together. Then when he fought Jimmy Ellis for the middleweight championship in Chicago, Ellis lost to Johnny Pearsall, and we were so delighted because Johnny Pearsall, Johnny James, my brother Mike Cortez, and myself were the 4 New York Easters and national champion that year. I say national, the intercity bout, New York versus Chicago, East Coast versus the West Coast. And I remember fighting a fighter by the name of Oscar German. And if you talk to Emmanuel Stewart will tell you that one of the fighters that ever beat Emmanuel Stewart was Oscar German. Well, that Oscar German is a fighter that I ended up beating for the intercity bouts in Chicago Stadium back in 1961. But Ellis lost to us that year, so New York beat Chicago 9-6, and we had a great year in boxing. But going back to Floyd Patterson, so he lost to Jimmy Ellis with a 15-round decision. Ali then again gave in 1972 gave Patterson shot for the NABF heavyweight title, stopping Patterson by TKO in the 7th round. You know, Patterson was a good young man who had a great heart. He trained, he adopted a fighter by the name of Tracy Harris Patterson, and that's the kind of heart that Floyd Patterson had. You know, when he was a young man himself, a troubled youth, he knew where he came from. He was able to reach the pinnacle of his career, becoming a 2-time heavyweight champion, and started training fighters. Had Tracy Harris Patterson, who was a decent fighter, became, I believe, a junior lightweight champion himself. And then back in 1995, Floyd Patterson was appointed by Governor George Pataki to the New York State Athletic Commission chairman position, and it was a nice thing. But Patterson, back in the days when he started back talking about giving back to the community, he started a program in New York. It was called the Wick Youth Program, and that was back in 1962. And Eleanor Roosevelt, former First Lady, came around to visit the Wick Youth Program that Floyd had started, and she donated a $10,000 check to help out Floyd Patterson with that youth program. And that was very a kind gesture of the former First Lady to give Floyd some support and help with the program. Later on, it was named the Patterson Home, and Floyd Patterson was, again, like I said, a gentleman who gave so much to boxing, so much to the community, did so much with the New York State Athletic Commission, was a great man. And I have a photo that most recently I was looking at: Cus D'Amato, Floyd Patterson, Mike Tyson, and Jose Torres in one photo. That was it's an amazing photo to see. And unfortunately, Floyd Patterson passed away in 2006, and after battling Alzheimer's and prostate cancer. So Floyd Patterson, I know you're watching over us here in the boxing world, the sport that you love so much, and you fans out there, thank you for listening to this important topic about the former 2-time heavyweight champion, Floyd Patterson. Take care. See you next week.